Have you ever felt like the world around you is in constant motion, like a whirlwind of responsibilities, emotions, and expectations? For me, there was a time when even the simplest things felt like too much. It was as if every little challenge of the day piled up, and before I knew it, I was carrying a weight that I could barely bear. The first thing I learned was to recognize the chaos. It's easy to ignore what's happening around us and pretend we're in control, when, in fact, we're drowning in stress. When I stopped and looked at my routine, I realized how filled it was, with tasks that weren't priorities but took up mental and physical space. Recognizing this was the first step to regaining balance. Maybe you're dealing with something like this right now. It could be work overload, family issues, or even the pressure you put on yourself to be perfect. Acknowledging these sources of chaos isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of courage. By identifying them, you start to regain control. How about we take a moment now to think about the areas of your life that seem out of control? Just identify one thing. Don't worry about solving it right away, just acknowledge it. That small step is already a victory. And together we can figure out how to bring more balance to your routine. After recognizing the chaos, I realized that trying to change everything at once left me even more exhausted. I felt trapped between the need to do something and the fear of failing. That's when a friend told me something that completely changed my perspective. You don't need to fix the whole world. Just start with what's within your reach. I started small. I included a 5-minute break in my day to breathe and reconnect. It might seem insignificant, but those 5 minutes helped me feel like I had control over at least a piece of my time. Gradually, I added other small changes, organizing my workspace, saying no to unnecessary commitments, and creating a morning ritual that mentally prepared me for the day. Have you ever thought about how small changes can have a huge impact? Maybe it's starting the day with a glass of water instead of checking messages on your phone, or setting aside 10 minutes before bed to reflect on something you're grateful for. Don't underestimate the power of these simple actions. They are like pieces of a puzzle that, together, form the picture of a more balanced life. How about thinking of something small you can change today? It doesn't have to be perfect or grand. Just a small adjustment that brings you closer to feeling more aligned with yourself. It could be something as simple as allowing yourself a few minutes of silence or reorganizing a messy drawer. How about we try it together? There was a time in my life when I said yes to everything and everyone. I took on more responsibilities. At work, was always available for friends and rarely took time for myself. I didn't realize that by trying to please everyone, I was neglecting my own emotional health. I woke up exhausted, went to bed with a restless mind, and felt like my energy was being drained every day. Everything changed when I realized that the problem wasn't the world around me, but the lack of boundaries I wasn't setting for myself. I understood that protecting my energy was an act of self-care, not selfishness. I started by saying no to small things, an event that didn't excite me, an unnecessary meeting, or a task that didn't need to be done by me. At first, I felt guilty, but over time I realized that those no's were making room for the yeses that truly mattered. Setting healthy boundaries is an ongoing learning process. It involves recognizing your priorities, communicating clearly, and most importantly, standing firm, even when people don't understand. For example, I committed to not answering phone calls after 8 p.m. to preserve my evenings. At first, I received criticism, but over time, people began to respect it. And, more importantly, I respected myself. What about you? Have you thought about which areas of your life need clearer boundaries? It could be at work, in relationships, or even with technology use. How about starting with a small decision today? Something that shows you value your energy and your time. Remember, you deserve the same care and attention that you offer to others. There was a time when I believed that to be productive, I needed to be busy all the time. I filled every minute of my day with tasks, replied to messages while eating lunch, and even my leisure moments came with a sense of guilt. But inevitably, my body gave warning signs. Constant exhaustion, lack of creativity, and even difficulties concentrating. It was when I realized that I wasn't living in balance, but in overwhelm. The journey to balance productivity and rest began with small changes. First, I redefined what it meant to be productive. I understood that quality is more valuable than quantity. A strategic 15-minute break in the middle of work did more for my mental energy than hours on end in front of the computer. Furthermore, I started scheduling breaks as an essential part of my routine, instead of viewing them as indulgences. Today, my day has a different rhythm. I still value productive moments, but they are balanced with time to take care of myself. It could be a walk outdoors, a reading break, or even a brief breathing exercise. I discovered that these pauses do not make me less efficient. On the contrary, they give me more energy to face challenges with clarity and focus. And you? Have you felt that rest has enough space in your life? Perhaps it's time to reflect on how you can better balance these two important pillars. You can start small, like setting aside a moment in your day to disconnect and recharge. After all, taking care of yourself is an essential part of achieving your goals. Have you ever felt like you were always on? Like your phone, emails, and notifications didn't leave room for a moment to breathe? I've been there. We live in a world where being available all the time seems like a requirement, and it's easy to get lost in this avalanche of stimuli. It was only when I consciously decided to disconnect from the external noise that I began to truly reconnect with myself. The first time I turned off my phone for an entire afternoon, I confess it was uncomfortable. I was afraid of missing something important, of not being accessible, but that silence was transformative. I used that time for simple things, like journaling, meditating, and even watching the clouds in the sky. It may seem silly, but it was in those moments that I felt more present and connected with my own thoughts and emotions. Disconnecting is an opportunity to rediscover what really matters. It gives us space to process our experiences, listen to our intuition, and renew our energy. It doesn't mean we need to abandon technology, but that we can redefine our relationship with it. For example, today I set specific times to access social media and reserve parts of my day for offline activities, like reading or simply enjoying a good cup of tea in silence. If you feel you need more moments of peace and clarity, how about trying a brief digital detox? It could be an hour, an afternoon, or even an entire day without technology. Use that time to do something that nourishes your soul. You'll be surprised at how much you can discover about yourself when you give space for silence and reflection. When was the last time you stopped to be grateful for the little things in your life? It may seem like something simple, almost insignificant, but the daily practice of gratitude has a profound impact on how we see the world and connect with it. I only realized this when I started noting down 3 things I was grateful for every night. At first, it was difficult. I found myself searching for grand achievements or extraordinary events. But soon I learned to appreciate the small moments, like a stranger's smile or the comfort of a blanket on a cold night. Gratitude changes our perception because it makes us focus on the positive. It's easy to get lost in difficulties, in endless task lists, or in daily worries. But when we train our minds to look for what is going well, we start to see beauty in unexpected places. I remember a time when I was stuck in traffic, frustrated and late, but then I noticed the sky in shades of pink and orange at sunset. That simple moment changed my mood and made me grateful to be there, alive, to witness it. Practicing gratitude doesn't have to be something elaborate. It can be as simple as writing a list, saying thank you to someone special, or even reflecting in silence on something good that happened in your day. Over time, this becomes natural, almost like a reflex, and you will notice a greater lightness in your life. So why not start today? Think of 3 things you are grateful for right now. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. This habit, I assure you, can transform the way you see the world and, more importantly, how you feel about yourself. Have you ever felt like you were living on autopilot, just reacting to events instead of controlling them? I lived that way for a long time, rushing from one task to another, constantly overwhelmed.